Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manoj Agarwal, and today we'll be talking with Leejon Killingsworth. So Leejon is the Coyote Ugly Saloon's chief marketing officer, retail officer, owner, and partner. The Coyote Ugly Saloon is a drinking establishment in United States and the inspiration for an international chain of bars known for its bartenders dancing on the bar. It was the setting of the 2000 film Coyote Ugly. It is one of the most well-known bars in the world, and it is expected to be the first billion-dollar bar brand in history. Lee has contributed to the massive success of Coyote Ugly Saloon. He completely redesigned the website and got an increased traffic, get this, by 1000%. Developed a sluggish retail program from the ground up into a multi-million dollar revenue generator, as well as merchandise program that is constantly evolving and growing in revenue. Lee is a franchise location expert who finds new successful locations and approves franchise locations. He created and oversaw the global brand's marketing, commanding multi-million dollar advertising budgets. Lee also took complete creative control of the merchandise line from a single design to an entire product line with over 100 SKUs and assisted in the sale of merchandise in Target, Walmart, JCPenney, Spencer, just to name a few. What used to be a worth what used to be worth $1,000 in revenue per year, a few $1,000s in revenue per year, is now worth millions, he says. Lee has outstanding expertise in business and marketing. He studied marketing business management at Missouri State University and marketing business management at Pittsburg State University. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. It's quite a long introduction.
Well, I could have gone longer because you have so many success stories under your belt. So let's start with that. Like, how did you get into this line of work? Let's go down the memory lane and just talk about your life. How did you get to where you are today?
It was a very bizarre path. I was never planning to go this route. Growing up, I thought I was going to be a professional hockey player. That was my only goal. That's what everybody told me I was going to be. I played 2 years above my age group in Canada. Moving to California in high school, I started playing for national hockey teams. I played for state California team. I was on the Olympic track and got to right there at the end and burned out. I just burned out. I got injured in an exhibition game for a junior hockey team and broke my collarbone, and I never went back. I just burned out. I didn't anticipate that happening. So I kind of was a little bit lost with that point. My father was a university professor, so I was like, I'll just go to college. So that's what I did. And while in college, a new sport called MMA developed, and this new promotion called the UFC was created in the mid 90s. And I had been a martial artist my whole life, as just I don't know if you want to call it a hobby, but it's just something I've been doing since 8 years old. But I was really inspired by MMA and the UFC promotion. I had never seen anything like it. The whole world of martial arts had never seen anything like it. So I ended up moving to Las Vegas to be closer to the UFC promotion to get into it. And at that time, there was really no money in it. There's no money in MMA. And I don't even know if you want to say there's even money in it now. But that was my goal, to move to Vegas to get into the UFC. Within a year, I was divorced, like everybody that moves to Vegas, married. And I was working in the nightclub business at the time, like all MMA fighters do. We all work in the nightlife business. You work as security because it affords you the ability to train during the day and you work at night. And you only have to work a couple nights a week to really cover your bills. It can be a pretty decent job if you're in the right place. And when my life kind of fell apart there, I was a little bit at a crossroad, right? I didn't know where I was going to go with my life. Now that I was divorced, I couldn't train and work like the way I needed to in order to make it to the UFC promotion. And this was in its infancy. You have to remember, like this started the mid 90s, and I'm talking about 1997 right now. So there wasn't this whole infrastructure around that sport yet. So you were basically picking up fights at bars. these little promotions that were not sanctioned and stuff like that. And it took Chuck Liddell to be the first guy to even make $1 million. And that's pretty low in the world of professional sports, right? And you're taking a lot of punishment. You're taking hits. You're getting punched. You're getting kicked. I've broken both my hands multiple times. In fact, like there's the surgery scars. It took 3 surgeries to fix this hand.
Wow.
It's a hard life. You know what I mean? And the compensation, I don't know if it's there yet. But being that was a really low point of my life, working in the nightclub industry, I started seeing how you could manipulate an environment to change the emotional state of all the people within those 4 walls. So I was able to shut out the outside world in the world of the nightlife industry. And I really became enamored with that. And I started working as a promoter and had a talent for getting people to walk through a very specific door to come party for a night.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to harness that talent into working into some premier nightclubs in Las Vegas at the exact right time you needed to be in Las Vegas. So I moved out of 97. By 2002, entertainment, like nightclubs, restaurants, surpassed gaming revenue for the first time ever in 2004, right? So those moments between 1997 and 2002 were really important for not only the city of Las Vegas, but for me and my development within this industry. There's about 30 people in Las Vegas that changed the whole city, right? There's 30 people that did that, and I was one of those 30 people. And I got to ride that wave, and I was doing events for Warner Brothers. I did an event that had 1,000 people at it that were all A-list celebrities. I'd never seen anything like it. And it really started really getting to me and really getting passionate and inspired by that industry. And I was running a 65,000 square foot venue. I was the nightclub operator and the liquor manager for the restaurant. It was partially owned by Warner Brothers, and the majority partners were the company behind Planet Hollywood. So it was a company named Enoch, and they developed the Planet Hollywood concept. And this concept was called Stage 16, Warner Brothers Stage 16 and the Velvet Lounge. And they were looking to recreate another Planet Hollywood. Now, 2001, 9/11 changed everything. It changed the momentum of that company. We were supposed to open in Chicago that year, and then we'd do another one in New York. But Las Vegas took such a hit monetarily after 9/11 that it didn't really recover for a year, and that stunted the expansion plan. I started to see the writing on the wall that this probably wasn't going to go where I needed it to go. But at the time, this little tiny 3,000 square foot bar opened in the New York casino called Coyote Ugly. And of course, I had seen the movie, but I didn't even know at that time that it was a real bar. And the producers from the movie, Jen Worthington, and a guy who was a fixture of probably the number one guy that helped create the Vegas nightlife scene, a guy named Stevie D. I'm going to butcher his last name, Stevie Daviducci. I can't remember how to say his name. He's going to kill me next time I see him. But anyway, right. Stevie D was probably the biggest part of what created the Vegas nightlife scene that we see today. And he was a partner in that company. My GM, who was probably the most talented operator in this industry I've ever worked with, named Kenna Warner, went on to be the GM of the Coyote Ugly Saloon. And they were putting up $1.3 million a month out of 3,000 square feet. And they were even using all 3,000 of those square feet. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like it. So I started studying this concept. I ended up putting together a financial team, backer team, and I was going to be a franchise owner myself. I packed all my stuff into storage, put my car with all the clothes I could, and I slept on this guy's couch for 4 months putting this deal together in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, only to have it fall apart at the finish line. Mm-hmm. They were the financial backers, and through a crazy string of events, it just didn't end up happening. But I ended up developing a relationship with the founder, Liliana Lovell. And at that time, she was exploding herself. The movie had just come out. She had all this interest in franchising. She had a small company out of New York at the time. She needed help. She needed help with expansion. She needed help with dealing with franchisees. So she gave me a shot as an opportunity as an outside consultant to kind of show her what I could do. And I helped her Dallas franchisee open their location, killed it, knocked it out of the park. 2003, we were sitting in the Adams Marks Hotel, and we're all sitting at a lobby table. There's 3 of us and one person on the phone, Jeff, the attorney partner back in New York. And we formed a company sitting right there in the Adams Mark lobby that is now responsible for everything that has happened ever since.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It seems like every successful person I talk to, they reach their success in a zigzag manner. Trying this and trying that, but never ever giving up, but always looking for opportunities.
Yep.
Will you say that these are the traits that sort of help you get here?
100%, because no matter what planning you put into place, no matter what goals you have, life has a way of putting up some obstacles in front of you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and I think most people, when that happens, that's it. That's where the story ends. They hit that first wall and they don't continue on. In reality, those success stories, I have yet to come across a success story, and I've worked with a lot of huge people over the years, Bill Gates included, Mark Cuban, and none of them had this easy path. Like it is fraught with trouble and barriers and unexpected circumstances that you could never plan for. Like our original office was in the World Trade Center. My partner was in the building when the planes hit.
Oh my goodness.
That was moved it to New Orleans after that. And then a few years later, Katrina came and caused that. And most recently, COVID has been another struggle for people in our industry, and constantly reminds me of this quote from Rocky, that it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and still move forward. Keep getting up. And that's something that always circles in the back of my mind. Yeah. Because that's really the key to success, is never.
Absolutely. And I think the funny thing is, as you're going through it is no fun, but when you have gone through it and you can look back, the stories become very entertaining.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a very entertaining concept, to say the least.
Speaking of entertaining, when we met in Phoenix, one thing that intrigued me about your interest in aliens. So I promised you I will bring that up. So let's talk about that. How did you get into that? It's a very, because my background is science and technology. I've been fascinated with space since I was a kid, and it's an interesting topic for me as well. So how did you get into that?
I have my parents are both educators, right? They're both educators everywhere from pre-K all the way up to my dad, who's a university professor, doctorate level professor. And so learning and science has always been just something that is very interesting to me, but I really, really find quantum physics very fascinating. Quantum mechanics, I love it. So I have a hobby of reading up on those subjects. And of course, alien life somehow comes crossing through into that. Mathematically, my interest in astrophysics, mathematically, there is life in the universe. There's just no way there isn't. Whether we've been visited by that life is up for debate. Who knows? We'll see what this NASA probe, this NASA investigation, yields. But it is definitely really interesting subject for me to have a hobby really being interested in.
Yeah. I think one of the things, another thing is, as you get into quantum mechanics and all that, and we try to understand the world around us, being entrepreneurs, being on the cutting edge, it has some things that you start to experience in your life which sort of relate to quantum mechanics and sort of start to make sense. So we did touch upon that a little bit. So why don't you share your views about that? I would love for the audience to listen to it.
Spooky action at a distance, here's the thing for me is not realizing how connected things can be, like second and third layer consequences to decisions that you make. And you see that happening at the subatomic level. You know what I mean? They subatomic particles act different when being observed than when they're not being observed. You wouldn't necessarily make these kinds of connections directly because it kind of goes against what you would normally think it works like. But in reality, there's a lot of relationships and a lot of cascading effects through business that you don't necessarily see, through relationships that you don't normally see. So I think that interest in science has helped me in business as well. Books like Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics, the relationship between things like crime and abortion rates, like that would have never had those parallels. I would have never thought that. So those kinds of things and the quantum world really opened up my eyes to how things really do affect each other in spooky, mysterious ways.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is like how, coming back to the business side of things, building $1 billion bar brand, it is unheard of. Like, there are, as you said, like in Vegas, there are large, big brands, but never to this extent. What is your unique recipe for getting that success in an industry which is arguably a very old industry, and it's a tried and tested sort of formula. So how come you found something so unique in this industry which has been around for thousands of years?
Thousands of years. This is how Rome built their empire, using taverns. In fact, back in the Roman era, they used to measure distance by how far the taverns were from each other, right? Because a tavern was a de facto hotel, restaurant, hospital. It was a recovery place. It was a resupply. They used it for so many different things back then. But it was an empire builder, not only in Rome, but right here in the United States as well. We did the exact same thing. One of the first 3 structures in every pop-up pioneer early settler city or township in the United States, one of them was always a bar, always a tavern. And that's because it was also the courthouse. Sometimes it was even the jail. So this industry has been around for thousands of years and operated largely the same. It took Liliana Lovell looking at this industry that is operated with mainly male bartenders for thousands of years and flipping it a little bit on its head. She opened up the positions that were traditionally male-dominated roles and made a very diverse team. We put women behind the bar. We do it differently than other bars do. We operate a lot differently. Dancing on the bar is not something you see very often. So that combined with a real passion behind doing the business, a dedication on a level like Lil's work ethic is unparalleled. I have never seen anybody work that hard as I have our team with Coyote Ugly. And a lot of this was, especially in the early years, was accomplished with 4 people. You know what I mean? And we were all 4 operators. I came from a nightclub background in Vegas. Kevin Bailey came from a nightclub background in Atlanta. Lil came from dive bars in New York. She was also worked on Wall Street, but her restaurant hospitality background was these dive bars. The Village Idiot was where she was working last before she opened Coyote Ugly, and she did everything from bartending to running these places. And at 24 years old, decided to open her own bar and change the whole industry. When that movie came out, I was running nightclubs in Vegas already, and all nightclubs and restaurants, they would have, if you look behind their bar, almost all guys, maybe 1 female bartender. And then you'd have female waitstaff. After that movie, I would have to say within a year, I think it flipped. Now it was all female bartenders and 1 guy bartender. It completely changed the industry. And now that's the normal model that you see. You see that. And it took 2,000 years and to have a woman CEO to kind of come up with this. And it changed everything. That's a huge part of the ingredient that allowed us to accomplish what we did, And the other thing is not leaving money on the table. You know what I mean? We are bar people. We make our money off of selling beer and shots, right? The reality is that's not where we stopped at. We redid our merch program. And in doing so, I redid our website and then added this new function at the time 20 years ago, which is blogging, which now is like old hat. Now it's all podcast. But back then it was blogging. And I put this thing called the Lil Spill into our website that allowed a vehicle for our CEO to explain how awesome she was and her philosophies on things. And 90% of it was yelling about me, to be honest with you, complaining about me, about some of my crazy antics. But it allowed her to get that personality out there. And that's how the head of ABC became a regular fan of her blog. And then we ended up with a reality show 4 years after the movie came about because of her putting out who she was on this blog. And that reality show was one of the most successful ones that MTV ever had at the time. Our pilot episode had 51 million viewers. Like, I will never forget this meeting. They brought us into this office in Nashville to the CMT offices, and that's big 51 million number was on this giant screen. And at that time, I don't know where they're at now, but at that time it broke every record they ever had. Amazing. So that gave me the opportunity then segue that spotlight into doing merchandise programs inside Target, Macy's, JCPenney's, and 100 other boutique retailers. You know what I mean? It afforded us this ability to do a licensing deals with our brand, so we could make partnerships with other people in other industries, and we did, and they were very successful. In addition to the franchising, which you would typically find in the hospitality setting. But we just looked at all these other opportunities and all this money we were leaving on the table and took it all. We captured it. Nice.
I think to sort of summarize the key points, what I got was like, I think diversity of thought and diversity of, just different sort of people from different backgrounds, different genders. I think that works in every industry. I mean, I come from the technology industry, and it has been primarily male dominated, but I believe that whenever I have worked with projects where women are involved, or at least 50-50 ratio, it has gone much, much better. And I think what you said about just looking for those opportunities that people miss out, and then putting your true personality out there, because that's one thing I also find that a lot of people who want to be successful, they always sort of are afraid of showing themselves as their true self. But as you said, even yelling at you, whatever that true self is, if you put it out there, people notice, and that authenticity pays off in the end.
Got to be authentic. Like, people can tell now, like, they're more sophisticated than ever before. And to bring your point home, like, there's a very big example of what not having a diverse team does for you, and it's the MGM Casino in Las Vegas. When I moved there, the MGM Casino had a giant lion's head that you would walk through at the front end. They couldn't figure out why they weren't getting Asian gamblers coming through, and that's because they didn't have anyone on their team that could tell them, hey, walking through the head of a lion is bad luck in a lot of Asian cultures.
Yeah.
They spent millions to completely change the facade of their building. And that always stuck in the back of my head, like, always have a diverse team when you're doing anything, especially investing millions of dollars into a build out. Diverse teams will save you. Diverse teams make better decisions and faster decisions.
Absolutely.
So Harvard did a whole study on this. So they do come up with faster decisions and better decisions.
Yeah. So that brings up a very interesting point, because being in the bar business, I believe, other than knowing a lot about liquor and all that, you have a unique perspective on humanity itself, like the behavior of humanity, because it's, we were just talking about like how we are not able to show our authentic self, but once you have like one or two drinks in you, your true self comes out. So
for sure, filters come off.
Yeah. So can you share with us any interesting stories or any observation you have noticed about human nature, that just like the example that you shared about, walking through a lion's head, like what have you noticed in your unique position of observing people when they are under the influence of alcohol?
Here's where, like, that was a question I wasn't expecting, and there's a great answer for this. And for the last 20 years, I've been traveling the world. I've gone to 28 countries, 400 different cities worldwide. I had to do most of it by myself, right? Because I don't have a lot of friends that can just drop a hat, go spend 2 weeks in Japan doing market research, Yeah.
Well, I can be your.
You can.
Yeah.
We're opening in London, Piccadilly next.
Yeah.
So that'll be the next one. But it afforded me the opportunity to go around the world and drink and socialize with people from so many different backgrounds. And in the end, we all kind of want the same thing. We all love to celebrate. We all love to socialize. We like having friends. We like making new friends, and we like learning about each other. And that was the big light bulb for me. Like in the end, like we can say there's these borders and these different cultures, and there are definite differences in cultures, you know what I mean? But in the end, we all really just looking for that connection. And that's what I love about my industry is we facilitate these opportunities for people to celebrate those big wins, their birthdays, to celebrate a wedding. In fact, like I've been part of so many people asking each other to marry them over the years. And I really am thankful for those opportunities because it's something that's going to impact them for the rest of their lives. And it's kind of what I really do this for. You know what I mean? It's to see those smiles at the end of the night and those people cheersing and toasting each other to their health. You know, toasts used to be called healths back in the day because you were toasting to each other's health. And I love being part of that story. I love being part of this 2,000-year-old story and doing it in the way that we do it.
Amazing. And now, during this journey, as you said, lots of ups and downs, lots of hurdles. But what are some of the key lessons you have learned? Maybe you made some mistakes, or maybe, through series of events, you learned an important lesson that you can share with others who may not be like the audience that we have. They are entrepreneurs, they are, go-getters. They may not be in the bar business, but something that can be applied universally.
Yeah, I mean, expanding like we did, like some locations turned out better than others, and some of them you on paper should have been a huge success, but because of circumstances completely out of your control, end up not being the way you thought. So I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to constantly be aware that no matter how good my plan is, no matter how much my experience is, I could never have predicted in Milwaukee, for example, 2 weeks after we opened, that somebody on the street would get shot right in front of our location. That had nothing to do with our business, but it would never recover. This street would never recover from this incident. And I can tell you that other markets where there could be a shooting every week and it has no effect on business. And some of these things are just not in your control. So you want to do your best to try to hedge your bets as much as possible. But in the end, some of this universe working out the way that it does, you just can't always control everything. You know what I mean? And sometimes I've learned way more from the losses, so to speak, than I ever have from the wins.
That's very, very deep. And so continuing that theme of learning, like how did you have any mentors, any coaches, anybody who I mean, obviously it seems like you have a very good relationship with the CEO, the founder.
Yep.
But like any other incidents where you got a lot of value or right direction from your mentors?
I think that I will be a perpetual student my whole life, right? So some of the things that I've learned over the years didn't necessarily come from a mentor, but maybe came from a book. I can attribute my deciding to go towards the Coyote Ugly thing to a very specific book, and it's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that book didn't teach me anything about running a bar, nothing at all. But it did teach me about looking at money differently and looking at teams to accomplish goals, right? Like it's all about teams. Like I was a goalie for hockey, and MMA is a very solitary sport. You have coaches and guys you do train with, but in the end, you're in that ring by yourself. When you're a goalie, you're in that net by yourself. You look different than everybody else on that team. So it's a very solo experience, but business in my understanding is not at all. You don't build businesses by yourself. You really don't. It takes a team. Whether that team is part of your company or part of a strategic partnership, you just need that team. And that's like the kinds of things I've taken away from something like a book or a Kenna Warner, who is like a back of house genius and a front of house genius for the most part. She's taught me so much. So I've learned so much from people that I've learned from over the years working with them. I've also learned from my worthy rivals, right? Like I believe in worthy rivals. I need someone to that competition side of me, that sports guy inside. I need a worthy rival. My worthy rival for Coyote Ugly was the Hard Rock. Hard Rock Cafe did a great job with their branding. They did a great job with their expansion. And that was my worthy rival for my company, for what I was doing. And I find huge value in that, in addition to just the mentor relationships and the books that you can learn from.
Yeah. That's a very good, unique answer. Like learning from rivals. Like a lot of people, obviously, books and mentors are so valuable, but also learning from your rivals is just such a amazing resource that people ignore. Just out of their own insecurity and whatnot. So that's great. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I was really looking forward to it, and how do people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you, if they want to just
LinkedIn? That would be the best one for sure. Find me on LinkedIn under Leejon Killingsworth. I think it's at Leejon, if I remember correctly.
All right, so we'll find that and we'll add that link to the show notes
for sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.